neither a Democrat nor a Republican nor an amendment. I speak as a victim of America's so-called democracy. You and I have never seen democracy. All we've seen is hypocrisy. Me and my girls just wanna die down, and that's why we fixing each other's ground. Please lie down. Hey, hey. Me and my girl fighting die down, and that's why we fixing each other's ground. Please lie down. Hey, hey. Me and my girls just wanna die down, and that's why we fixing each other's ground. Please lie down. Hey, hey. Me and my girls just wanna lie down, and that's why we can to each other's ground. Please lie down. What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Queen's Wind Down. I am your leading lady, Tyra Hill, and today we're talking the presidential election 2020, hashtag the bullet or the ballot. I am so excited about today's show. I have some amazing, dope guest co-hosts on this evening, and we're going to introduce my guest co-hosts on tonight. I am excited. I am honored to have Dr. Pamela Pugh. Dr. Pugh, that's my girl, first and foremost. Let me say this. That's my girl. But Dr. Pugh has spent most of her career seeking to improve the learning and health of children and the environments in which they live, learn, and play. She was elected to serve on the Michigan State Board of Education in November of 2014 and currently serves on the board as the board's vice president. Her term expires in January of 2023. Dr. Pugh is a child advocate. She believes in approaching the education and the involvement of the community, improving our environment, and aligning of our health and education to improve each child's cognitive, physical, social, and emotional development. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome my girl, my sister, my friend, Dr. Pamela Pugh.
Hey,
Dr. Pugh!
Tyra, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Queen.
So happy. You know, I was pressing to get here.
I know you were, and I appreciate that. We're going to introduce my other guest co-host for tonight. Some of you know her as the former mayor of Flint. She is the first female mayor of Flint. She was the first African-American female mayor of Flint. She is also a dynamic, phenomenal woman. She's a wife, she's a mom, and now she's a glamour, and I am excited for her. Her passion in politics leads her to so many different other avenues. She is still a community activist. She is still in the political arena, and she is now the host of Black Money Matters. She is my friend, and I welcome her. She goes by the name of Dr. Karen Weaver. Dr. Weaver.
Yes.
How are you, Queen?
I'm good. I'm so glad to be here. Hey, Pam, Dr. Pugh, how you doing? Tyra, you know I'm excited.
I'm excited to have y'all.
This conversation.
Oh yeah, I get excited when I get with some amazing sister girls and we talk about it.
We're gonna talk about it.
But tonight we're adding a king, ladies. Do you mind? We're adding a king.
Alphonso
Add a
Amos.
king.
I'm so excited about Alphonso Amos. King Alphonso Amos is an individual that is committed to working for social justice and improving the quality of life for all. He describes himself as a connector. He connects people to resources and people to people. King Alphonso is the former branch president and secretary of the Port Huron branch of National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, also known as the NAACP. When he is not volunteering and organizing within the community, he works as the program director for Streetwise Partners, a nonprofit organization focused on leveraging mentorship to increase employment opportunities for adult job seekers. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome, last but not least, my other co-host for this evening, King Alphonso Amos. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Tyra. Thank you, and I'm glad to join you other queens in this conversation.
Oh, I'm excited about this, and let me tell you all something. There we go. That's how I want to have the conversation. Tonight's conversation is so important because right now, as African Americans and as United States citizens, we are fighting for our lives, politically, fighting for our lives. There's a lot of conversation going on around this presidential election, right? And for me, I like to be clear on what's going on. A lot of times we see within our community that there is always a lot of rah-rah, right? Mayor Weaver, you and I talked about the bait clicks on how they run stories, right? And how they'll get us all hyped up, but we do not research, nor do we read. We just go off of what the headlines say. And so tonight, we're going to talk about it. We're talking Ice Cube's contract with Black America. We're talking the Biden-Harris promise to Black America. We are also talking the Supreme Court nomination. So are you guys ready to get into it?
I'm ready.
Let's get into it.
Let's go.
Let's get into it. So this year's election, we're dealing with a lot. We have President number 45. We have President Trump, who is running against Republican President Donald J. Trump, who is running against Democrat Joe Biden. This election is extremely crucial because we are in the midst of a pandemic and a lot of people are voting by mail. Mayor Weaver, what are your thoughts on how this election is going thus far?
You know what? You were talking about a lot of people are voting by mail. I have voted. I have voted. I wanted to make sure that I got my ballot in there. My family has voted because this has been scary. This has been a scary election. And, you know, you look around and you see every time you turn around, they're doing something for voter suppression, trying to suppress the vote. And they do all kinds of tactics to suppress the vote. They lie, they give you bad information, they try to scare you, they try to intimidate you. And so now more than ever, we need to be about our business. We need to get out and vote. And one of the things I wanted to make sure I had gotten mine taken care of because I'm going to be out there on election day. I feel like I have an obligation, like it is our duty to make sure we're waking people up and saying, get to the polls. I mean, we've got to rally the troops, and I want to do everything I can. I know Pam and I have talked about this a lot as far as being out there, being safe, but being out there and encouraging people to vote and, you know, reminding them. Because sometimes, you know, it's funny. I hope we don't have to remind people it's election day, but sometimes we've had to do that. So I'm ready. I am ready because this is a scary time.
It is.
This is scary.
This pandemic is really not even just scary political wise, but people wanting to get out and vote. People need to feel safe in order to vote and show up at the polls. Dr. Pugh, I want to come to you because you are the former chief health advisor.
Right.
And I know you speak a lot about this pandemic. What are your thoughts about showing up to the polls on November the 3rd?
Right. So can you all hear me? Because I put my headphones on.
Yes.
Am I clear? Okay.
Yes.
So, one of the things that I've been saying is that this is not a Democrat or a Republican thing. This is about voting insanity out of the White House. We have someone who has ignored the science, defied science. We thought that we saw it in Flint. And so here we're seeing it on a much bigger scale at a national level. Over 215,000 U.S. citizens, residents have died from this disease because of the ineptness and just the doggedness and the callousness of this man who is right now leading our world. 5 million, or I'm sorry, 8 million who have died. And so when we talk about that, and then let's talk about just right in Michigan where we live, we see our levels up, but we saw him here once again in Michigan, not practicing safe measures that we know are what are the only mechanisms that we have to defend ourselves. He knows this because he just was in the hospital for COVID. When we look at Trump, I live in Saginaw, Michigan. Our numbers are going up, not in the city, but in those out county areas. So when we look at this from a public health standpoint, this vote is a matter of life or death for us, and especially African Americans, 2 times more likely to die of COVID as a country. Here in Michigan, it's been upward of six times more likely for African Americans to die. Our babies are more likely to be hospitalized if they do get the disease. So he was here in Michigan pushing for schools to open, not taking into consideration the health factors and the disproportionate health outcomes for our communities. So this vote is a matter of life or death for us.
So King Alphonso, Amos, welcome. And I want to tag you into the conversation because what are you thinking about Black men voting in this election?
You know what? I think it's really important, especially us as Black men, to start getting involved politically, especially when it comes to voting. We know that Black women have been holding us down for generations in terms of the harm reduction that voting does and who we allow to get into office. We've seen Black women show out to the polls in 2016 at great numbers, and we really need men to step up to the plate. Really get involved, understand what you're voting for, understand the ballot, understand what's on the ballot and things like that. And so I definitely think it's detrimental, especially in this election, that we don't just sit home and think that our votes don't matter and things like that, because voting is truly an act of harm reduction.
So let me ask you this. When you talk about getting our kings involved in this election, let's talk about the disenfranchisement that we see a lot within the African American community. And when we talk about the disenfranchisement, we're talking about those brethren and sisters, those queens and kings who can't vote because they are felons. What has Michigan done to improve the disenfranchisement laws?
Well, we know for our legislation, felons can vote in the state of Michigan.
Okay.
As long as you're not incarcerated, we do know that. But also recently, you talk about the criminal justice reform bill that just went through the State House in Michigan, and the governor just signed with expungement, and what that's going to do for our communities and the disenfranchisement of our communities. I think what's important is the education of individuals in our communities. So civic education is truly important. And so we do have people who think that they can't vote because they're a felon because of disinformation.
That's why I brought it up, because
go right ahead.
I brought it up because we don't know. A lot of us don't know, right? And so one of the things that I wanted to do tonight was not only have an impactful conversation, but give the audience things I want them to know before they go. You get what I'm saying? But go ahead, pick up where you were.
Can I say something? Because what he's talking about, Alphonso, what I've been trying to figure out, because one of the things he brought up is we know felons can vote as long as they're not incarcerated. Why has it been so hard for us to get that message out there? Because I know when I'm out, I'll hear so many people say, well, I can't vote because, I'm a felon. And it's like, yes, you can. They have beat that into our head for such a long time that we can't vote, that we believe it and we tell people that, and we don't go and vote. And so what do we do? I mean, how do we clear that myth up?
We have to start with campaigns. And one of the other things we have to realize is everybody does not have access to social media. So it's going to take us to hit the pavement, and to hit the pavement hard, to get this type of information out.
Mm-hmm. And
you can vote as a felon now because the law has changed. Mm-hmm. And that was important to me. I remember doing a show when I was on radio with one of the baddest defense attorneys, who is now a judge, a Black man. And we talked disenfranchisement because my son was a felon. And I felt like, well, he works, he pays taxes, why can't he vote? And so it was important to me. So a few years later, the law was changed. But I think it's the information, people, the lack thereof, because it's so much rah-rah. But go ahead, Alphonso.
Yeah, so really just tagging on to that. And I think what we really need to do is the messaging around elections and voting and what that looks like, and then breaking down to people, because as Tyra said, people don't have access. We think, it's a time of technology, everyone has access, but we know what the digital divide looks like in our communities. We know what access to internet and what it looks like to have that actual cell phone and to pay that bill. So really figuring out ways to share information within our communities, meeting people where they're at, making sure we're having this conversation within our churches, making sure that the people who are the busybodies in our local communities, the organizers, the Block Club leaders know this information so that they can be the ones disseminating this information throughout our communities, because they're the ones who are meeting people where they're at every day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So while we're talking about meeting people where they are, it was important to me to have the contract with Black America, also known as CWBA, and have an open dialogue, because there's a lot of controversy going on around this contract. And because Ice Cube met with President Trump, well, allegedly. But see, here's my thing, and I have to say this. We now know that Ice Cube never met with President Trump. Let me put that out there. And I feel the need to just put that out there. But what happens is we're finding more and more Black celebrities who are getting bamboozled for a photo op. And once they have a conversation, and it may not be with number 45, but once they have a conversation, they're made to be as if they're in cahoots, or if they are in partnership with number 45. Do I think that Ice Cube should have met with President Trump? I think that Ice Cube absolutely has the right to do whatever he wants to do. Do I think Tyra Hill would have had a conversation with Donald Trump? The answer to that question is absolutely not. I would not have wasted my time. I would not have wasted my resources, because I believe in my heart, and feel free to chime in, that Donald Trump is a trickster. He cannot be trusted. I believe that he has allied his way not only to the White House, but through the White House. And so I feel that it's time for African Americans to see him for who he really is.
So I want to chime in because you know what, and I'm coming from a whole different perspective as an elected official, how it was. Because I remember going to the White House. I think Pam was with me when we went to meet with that administration, because we had done so much work and gotten so much support and so many resources from the Obama administration. And so we still had some money there that we wanted. and some things we were trying to get for the city of Flint. So, and we thought about it. It's, do we go? Do we want to talk to him? And, I ended up going because I said, this is the type of person that will say, well, I'm not giving Flint anything, because they never even came to talk with me. That mayor wouldn't talk to me. So I wasn't going to give him, the ability
The satisfaction.
to say, that's the word I'm looking for. He couldn't have the satisfaction of saying that. But then you had to balance it, because I remember we were going and we were going to the White House frequently because we were trying to get some things. But I remember they invited us a couple of times, and it's almost like it was, let's say we want you guys to come. It was, Pam, I don't know if it was Black History Month, but there was something going on, and we had gotten invited to the African American Museum down there, remember? And I said, I am not going to Washington for a photo op. I'm not going. The next time I go, I'm coming home with a check. I'm coming home with a check. And I remember being invited 2 times, and I said, I'm not going. And I told him, I said, if you have a check for Flint, I'll be there. But until you have that, we cut off, communication as far as that piece went. And so it was a balancing act. And it was difficult. It reminded me of having to go and work with Snyder. I said, okay, I've got to.
Well, here's the thing. You have to have somebody at the table, right? I believe in having representation at the table. I know how to be an adult. I know how to sit across from someone that I personally don't care about to get the greater good done, right? But the question we have to ask ourselves is he willing to do what's right? There's been so many times where he has had the opportunity, Dr. Weaver, and the chance to dethrone and denounce white supremacy. And he has yet to do that.
Exactly.
And so for me, just to know that Ice Cube went, who said he would never sit down with the president, and also because I'll be bumping his song, Arrest the Police. Arrest the President, I'm sorry. Arrest the President, that is Russian intelligence. I was very, very shocked. But let's get into it.
Can I get 2 things in here?
Absolutely.
To your prior question about felons voting, and what Mayor Weaver and Alphonso talked about was good. But let's go back to this issue of voter suppression. And then let's go back to this topic that we're talking now. Because in this time, we're almost 2 weeks out from the election. There's only 2 things that people are doing. They're getting the vote out, or they're suppressing the vote. And the folks who are suppressing the vote, I mean, this is a whole new world. They're moving mailboxes. They're putting fake ballot boxes out. Who knows where the ballot will end up? So tell people to track their ballot. But they're also, this part isn't new, is getting voices to suppress the voter enthusiasm. And so this whole conversation that we're having around Ice Cube is around voter enthusiasm suppression.
And it's a fatal distraction.
And so we cannot negate the fact that Ice Cube had to know that was going to play a part in that. And don't get me wrong, because Mayor Weaver and I are working with some of the best known, noted strategists, women strategists in this country. And we knew that the first part of what we were doing was getting a Black female vice president, and that was no easy feat. But we also knew that there was a policy that we needed to get to this campaign, the Biden campaign that we're supporting. We support them with getting out the vote. We supported them with our dollars. Before they selected a VP, do you know that they were having a hard time getting money? Go back to when they got the VP selection, and you will find out that they had one of their highest, if not their highest, fundraising days. Definitely previously, it was a record. So we talk money, we talk about getting out the vote. But one thing is that we've come together collectively with people who know this system. I remember when Steve Harvey went to talk to President Trump. It wasn't the fact that Steve Harvey went to talk to President Trump. You can't do that in a vacuum. As an elected official, and Mayor Weaver, I'm sure you know this, some things you don't do in a vacuum, even if you are a policymaker. But you definitely don't do it if that's not your space. And you know that there are people who have had policy agendas for so long. You need to know what the history is, because the very thing that you may be asking them for, if it's an election season and if it's the opportunity to suppress the vote, that's when that's very well what's happening here. You might get a platform. So just want to get that out.
Well, and those are good points.
And I wanted to add, it was funny because you were talking about voter suppression, but you also talked about tracking your ballot. You know, this is how nervous I am about it. I have never taped myself going to vote just to show. I said, watch, I'm putting it in the box. I mean, my husband said, he said, what are you doing? I said, I'm taping myself. Take this.
Because I
as
think
we walk up here and put this in the box in front of City Hall. I mean, there's that much.
We're dealing with a whole nother dimension of evil and racism, right? And so we all find ourselves doing things that, you know, can possibly cover our butts or our tails in the end.
Yeah.
Right? So I get it, Dr. Weaver. I know this is an ink pen. I know people's like, what's she doing with the flowers?
But let me say this too, because Tyra, you said we're dealing with this whole new level of evil.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we dealing with that whole new level of evil? Do we think that they're cheating, crooking, stealing to get to the White House so that they can put a black agenda before us?
Well, is
that what all of this is for?
Right. And here's the thing. We talk about suppression and people say my vote doesn't matter, or, you know, I don't have to vote. It doesn't matter if I vote. If it did not matter if you voted, it would not be this much chaos going on around this election.
Right. And I just want to be clear that Trump is not doing all of this to get back into the White House to put forward a black agenda. That is not what his plan is. His plan is to get there to further oppress us. And so I'm just put that out.
Well, I'm so digging this conversation, and I want to talk about, because I also have the Biden-Harris promise to Black America as well. Right now, if you're just tuned in, thank you for tuning in to the Queen's Wind Down. We're talking the bullet or the ballot election 2020, and I am about to go over a contract with Black America. You heard a lot about it, whether it was on CNN, social media, but this is the contract that Ice Cube took to visit a representative from the Trump's camp. Number one, bill to guarantee Black opportunity and representation, which means, and I'm going to read what each of these mean. Adoptive plan of neo-reconstruction to redress past wrongs systematically imposed on Black Americans economically throughout many generations that has resulted in a wealth gap, where the average white family has 10 times the wealth of a Black family, in addition to some of the economic initiatives listed below, also formally apologizing to Black America for past discrimination and slavery. Additionally, Black opportunity and representation will include affirmative actions in schools, public and private, per student funding in states on an equal basis instead of paid by local property taxes, Black representation on all government civil rights bodies, civil rights classes mandatory in elementary schools, gerrymandering reform, additional polling places in Black and minority neighborhoods, Juneteenth to become a federal holiday. I apologize for stumbling over it, but this is okay. This is good. The ask is good. But Dr. Pugh, it takes me back to what you just said. What has Q done in the political arena to write out a plan for Black America? Who did he consult with? Who was his go-to people? I think I would have appreciated it more if this was done with Black leaders, Black financial analysts, Black politicians. And so for me, just reading number one, the bill to guarantee Black opportunity and representation, because true, there is a wealth gap. White families do have more wealth than Black families. But when we get to the things like affirmative action in schools, I think people fail to realize that affirmative action isn't just for Black people. Affirmative action has gotten other people other than Black people into doors. Look at the Ivy League schools. You get what I'm saying? Like, stop acting like affirmative action was our thing. I'm lost on that.
and I'm laughing because you're like, help me with this one. Because a lot of people do fail to realize other people benefit from affirmative action. It hasn't just been African Americans. And I do wonder who else he talked with. I don't know. In fact, I knew you were going to bring it up. I went back and listened to the interview today. When he was on Cuomo, to hear what he was talking about. And I wondered some of the same things that you're asking is, who did you sit down with to come up with this? And maybe he felt like he didn't have to sit down with anybody, or maybe he talked to people and we don't know. That's a good question.
Well, let's talk about number two.
Number two?
Bank lending reform. Bank lending will be regulated to require banks to lend a percentage of all loan and credit categories on an equal basis to the Black population each bank serves. However, the minimum threshold must yearly meet the percentage equal to the national Black population, currently approximately 13.4%. Rates on Black loans, federal and from banks, to be the same average as whites.
That's fine, but how about getting some banks in our neighborhoods, in our Black neighborhoods, for starters? How about some Black-owned banks? We need those things too. If we're going to talk about equity and financial institutions, and we need to look at loans and mortgages and all those kinds of things, and making that equal. But that's not enough. That's not enough at all. That's like dipping your toe in the pool instead of jumping in. Let's jump in.
Right. A viewer asked, is this Biden's plan? No. This is the contract with Black America. This is Ice Cube's plan. This is the plan that Ice Cube took to a representative from the Trump administration.
And so, Tyra, the piece that was accepted that Trump put into his plan, it's one piece, right? It's the $500 million, right? That went in there. And I really don't want this to be a bashing of Ice Cube. While I was on my way over here driving, I was listening to Ice Cube music. I'm
a fan of Cube.
I finally got to see him in concert. I think the point, for me, the point is, it's not that his plan isn't worthy of attention by the Biden campaign or the Trump campaign. We're all talking about the timing of it. And
absolutely
cannot ignore the fact that we're 2.5 weeks out.
But here's the reason why we have to talk about it, though, Dr. Pugh. We have to talk about it because people don't do their due diligence or
Yes.
their research, and they're paying attention to it.
Yes.
And if they're gonna, I want them to know what his ask was.
Yes.
I don't
Yes.
want them to just support him because he's cute. Let me
Yes.
tell y'all something. I'm West Side. Like, let me tell you, I'm a cute girl. You get what I'm saying? Like, Blue, you get, like, seriously. But at the end of the day, if he's going to be a voice for Black America, and
Yes.
if he's going to go to the Trump administration
Right.
and make a contract speaking for us, we need to know what he said. And
I
so
think
he talked about in number 3,
Right.
because it's 13, and I'm not going to read all of them because we don't have time. I'm going to go down. Federal funding of baby bonds. Like, some of this stuff, I'm like, do people even know what baby bonds are? Like, seriously. Passing federal programs providing every child with a government-funded trust account at birth, starting with $1,000 contribution. Federal Reserve and government pensions for qualified Black Americans. Federal Reserve to allow one-time interest-free loan for home ownership. Finance oversight. A banking commission over in a cabinet or a sub-cabinet will be set up to overlook and report on Black and minority lending, housing ownership, and mortgages. Personal data and credit. Prison reform. Privately run prisons will be abolished. Prison labor disallowed without consent, and nonviolent offenders incarcerated for 10 years or longer will be freed if good behavior standards meet. Judicial reform. Police Reform Act. I want to read this one. This is number 9. He has 13. Police reform will be implemented in an expensive act that will at minimum include elimination of qualified immunity, requirement of mandatory malpractice insurance for police officers, makes a list, makes police officers liable for unconstitutional actions by police, mandatory use of dashboard and body cams, elimination of chokeholds and no-knock warrants, establishment of residency requirements, de-escalation training, requirement to update training, severe penalties for evidence tampering. So he goes on. Then he goes on to talk about FCC license, which I knew he would because he's into network and making movies. Broadcast networks will be required to air Black produced content equal to 20% of the total content. He talks about the Confederate monuments and institutions. He wants all of those eliminated. He wants the Confederate flags on government grounds and properties, in public areas. He wants all streets to be renamed, all schools, public structures, etc., named after Confederate soldiers or leaders. And he wants a memorial to be built in Washington, D.C. for all victims who were murdered by the police. Then number 12, AGP program for education and jobs. And the Black responsibility was number 13. So I'm just going to have to be honest with you. I was not impressed. And you can go to a contract with blackamerica.com to get a copy of this.
Can you tell me what he said about education and what he said about healthcare? I heard you say one thing about education and I didn't hear anything about healthcare. Okay, Tyra, you know what? Alphonso, help me out here. Come on. Help.
You know what? I didn't see anything about healthcare.
I want to see those things.
Because Amos, I'm quite sure you read it. What did you think about it?
Opportunity, but I want because we know that ties into education. We know that ties into good health care, quality health care. There's some other things I would like to see that I don't see. I mean, just like I talked about I want some Black-owned banks. There are not enough of those. I want banks in our neighborhood. I want access to those things, and I want some equity. And that was what I didn't hear. And when I look at COVID, when I look at COVID and we're 12 or 13% of the population and 40% of the deaths, I have a problem with that. I have a huge problem with that. There's a concern there. And so we need to be talking about some healthcare issues in here. I don't mind talking about the criminal justice reform because we know that as well. But I want to talk about some education and we got what are you, the vice president of the State Board of Education? I want something around education. I went to a public school. I went to a good public school, and Flint was the leader in the country for public schools, community schools. I want to hear about that because that's what we deserve.
And you know what, Mayor?
It's really sad that you have to take it to somebody and say, give us what we deserve. Black Lives Matter. We shouldn't even have to say Black Lives Matter. If all lives matter, we wouldn't be saying Black Lives Matter. And it makes me angry that we have to have these kinds of conversations. I know Alphonso's laughing.
Well, I'm opposed to you, Mel Reader. Where you glass at?
Me too.
Where your glass at, Mary Reader? I'm a toaster.
I wanted to get a piece. I wanted to get a piece in there too because this is the.
I think we lost Dr. Pugh real quick.
Well, while we're waiting on Dr. Pugh to come back, go ahead and chime in there because I think Pugh's intentions to center Black folks was pure. I do think that.
Right.
But I think his strategy, as Dr. Pugh said earlier, his strategy.
The very man who just said he.
Go ahead, Alphonso.
The technology, right? So I think his strategy is off. And I think when we have this conversation, and I know a lot of community organizers that have this conversation on bridging politics with organizers and people leaving the people who have been the boots on the ground out of the conversation. And so I think some of the nuggets that he had in there on criminal justice reform and things like that were things that a lot of organizers want to see happen, especially in terms of the police and what police reform looks like. But I think his strategy around it was off, and I think there are gaps in his plan. There are things, as Dr. Weaver had stated, on education and healthcare that impact the lives of Black people at great levels that weren't in that plan.
Well, Dr. Pugh, since we have you back on, go ahead, beloved, because you were trying to say something.
I'm a process person. The content, for me, there's some promising pieces in there, but I'm a process person. I want to know who wrote the plan, who helped you write the plan, who you took the plan to, because the person the group Donald Trump, just came out and said he's going to the U.S. Department of Education and finding anyone who's spending money on the 1619 project and is going to take their funding away. He's also said that anyone who is teaching about how to abolish a systemic racism, he's snatching that funding away. So I don't understand.
I feel like, and not to cut you off, Dr. Pugh, but I feel like he is, even with the the stimulus pack, he is holding America hostage. Like he has to wait to see if he wins the election.
Right.
He's not going to do another stimulus until I'm hearing the echo or some music. If somebody can cut your, yes, thank you. And so for me, that's a problem for me because at the end of every day, I feel like he's extorting us. Like, if you don't vote for me, you're not going to get another stimulus pack. If you're teaching how to come against systematic racism, I'm going to take your funding away. I want to get into the Biden-Harris conversation with Black America. Joe Biden and Senator Kamala Harris are offering a different choice for Black Americans. They have a plan to deal with the pandemic safely and responsibly. They will build back the economy better with historic investments in the Black communities. They start off talking about expanding access to affordable health care, building on Obamacare to ensure access to high quality, affordable health care, creating jobs for Black men, creating millions of good paying jobs through a historic infrastructure and clean energy investment, and ensuring the new high paying jobs reach Black communities, providing startup capital for small businesses, opening the door for billions in loans and startup capital for Black owned businesses, providing startup capital for small businesses, reforming criminal justice, creating a national standard on use of force for law enforcement and incarceration for drug use alone, and support automated record sealing for certain nonviolent crimes, making college affordable, making public colleges and university tuition free for families earning under $125,000 a year, forgiving all undergraduate tuition, unrelated federal student debt loans, increasing Black home ownership, offering a $15,000 down payment tax credit for first-time home buyers. Obama did something like that too. Help Black men create opportunity and wealth, reduce the incarceration, tackle health, and expand access to affordable health care. So you can also get this plan on the BidenHarris.com. And I want you to do yourselves a favor. Research for yourself and see what each individual is talking about. Dr. Weaver, in the Biden-Harris plan, they talked about health care. They talked about reform. They talked about a lot. What is it that you think the millennials want to see or hear from the candidates in this 2020 presidential election?
Tyra, can you repeat that? Because I had a hard time hearing you.
Yes, ma'am, no problem. What is it that you think in this 2020 presidential election that the millennials need to hear from these candidates to get them out there to vote?
You know, that's been the question. I think they, you know, sometimes I've been taught. I have 3 millennials.
That's why I asked you, because I know there's
I
different
talked to them
conversation.
and their friends, and it was interesting because one of my daughter's friends was over the other day, and he was saying, "Well, I don't like any of them. You know, I'm not going to vote." And I said, "Wait a minute. You know, it's interesting that we always feel we have to like somebody. You may never even meet these people, but you better look at the issues that they're pushing and which ones line up with you the best, because you're not going to get 100%. And that's people to look at is what are the issues that they are pushing that line up with what they believe in. Because one of the things I've always told them is we're making decisions for you. You know, you need to be part of the decision-making table because the decisions are going to be made regardless. And when I'm gone, those decisions that were put in place will still be there, and they'll still be impacting you and impacting your kids. They're impacting your parents and your grandparents. And I think that's something that people have not really thought about. It's like, I don't like either one of them. I'm not excited about Trump and Pence. I'm not excited about Biden and Harris. We don't have to be excited all the time for the work to get done. You know, it's nice when you go to work and it's exciting, but you're there for something, and you need to make sure what is the goal, what is it that you're trying to push, and I think that that's what we want them to start, you know, dealing with. And sometimes you just have to talk to them a little bit differently, because some of those things that are on there, millennials are interested in, but the way it's been packaged, it doesn't even make them want to unwrap the package and look. No, and let me just say one other thing, because,
Mhm.
and this is going back, and I know I'm not answering all of that, because I want to go back, because I heard really both of the other two co-hosts talk about what Ice Cube had put together, and saying, I'm glad he has put something together, and not wanting to bash. I am glad he said something. I'm glad LeBron said something. I'm glad the WNBA is speaking out. I'm glad all of these people with platforms are speaking out. But one of the things, and maybe this is just based on, I haven't been a politician all my life. I've been a mayor, but I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. And when you look at documentation, if you didn't document it, it didn't happen. If it's not on that paper, I don't have to do it. And so documentation is everything. And so I don't want to go with a plan that has, some of the things that we want. But, well, heck, you didn't say that. You didn't say you wanted some banks, some Black-owned banks. You didn't say you wanted great health. You didn't spell it out. And so documentation is everything. And I'm going back to what you said, Tyra, as far as we've got to be very careful when we submit these kinds of things to make sure we have all of our I's dotted and our T's crossed.
Well, when we hear things like Senator Kamala Harris voted in the Criminal Act Bill of 1994, do you know how many Black men she has incarcerated? Dr. Pugh, what's your answer for that? Because is that your sorrow?
Yes, I will very proudly say that she is my soror, and she was over the largest prosecution department in the country. And when I look at her and I look at her record, and you can listen to her track record, listen to those who she helped through making sure that she was changing that system. There's a video that's on my page that speaks to how she pushed for the very things that Trump is trying to take away, which is teaching and giving tools and equipping prosecutors to be able to better work in that whole system, to be able to better work with our people. And also, when we look at Biden and Obama, 38,000 less prisoners in that system, looking at moving forward. And I trust this plan that Biden and Harris have moving forward. Decriminalizing marijuana, listening to their plan versus the rhetoric and the hate that's spewed by Trump as it relates to valuing Black life and making sure that this justice system, the justice system that Kamala was once over in California, knows how to better deal with our people. And so I definitely trust them moving forward.
Well, here's the thing for me, and Alphonso, I'm going to come to you with the question after I say this. The thing for me with all of that is, mute yourself, Dr. Pugh, mute yourself for me. The thing of it for me with all of that is, when I think about Kamala Harris and the 1994 crime bill as a Black woman who is the mother of a son who is a felon, who has not always been an upstanding citizen, my thing and my response to that is she did her job. She did her job. And it would be a different story for me if she was trumping up charges on innocent Black men, right? But at some point, we have to start holding the community accountable. You go out there, you do the crime, you're going to do the time. Now, it just so happens that it was a Black woman who prosecuted you. She didn't ask to prosecute you. She just simply did her job. So, Alphonso, when you hear that type of conversation and people say, well, that's why I wanted Bernie. Am I correct in saying Bernie Sanders voted for the 1994 crimes bill as well?
You are correct. He did vote yes on that crime bill. And I think when we talk that conversation about the 94 crime bill, I think what's important, especially for millennials like myself, to understand is the time frame in which that bill was written. When we talk the importance of any bill and legislation and what's being passed, I think that's another opportunity for organizers or for leaders to educate the community on what the process is on all bills. And so although the 94 crime bill is problematic and there had some issues in it, that bill was also supported by other Black leaders and community individuals who wanted that because of where crime was at in 94. Now, when we talk about the translation of that bill and what the impact of that bill in local communities and states in terms of incarceration of Black men, that goes back again to your state leaders and how they implemented that bill and what the effects of that bill was in your local community. And that's why it's important to not just have this conversation around the presidential election, but let's talk about state elections and let's talk about the power of those seats and let's talk about the local elections and the power of those seats and let's talk about the prosecutors that we are elected in our communities and our local courts and what that looks like and the effects of that. And I think it's really important to have all of that as part of the conversation when we talk about, again, the 94 crime bill. We talk about all the people who voted on that. People are just selective on their candidates. We talk about Biden. He was Uncle Joe 4 years ago. Right. And now Uncle Joe is now hated Joe by so many because of the 94 crime bill, when, of course, him and the Obama administration and all that they've done, and even their My Brother's Keeper initiative, that we don't talk about, and the over $600 million that was invested in the Black communities through that initiative and others.
So when we have those conversations, when we hear people say, well, I'm not for either one of them. Joe Biden, the 1994 bill, Donald Trump is a racist. What I cannot wrap my mind around, Black people, is the fact that we have so many African Americans who support Donald Trump. I am so blown back by that. And it's not that, and let me be clear, it's not that people don't have the right to vote for who they want to vote for or support who they want to support. But how can you support a blatant racist? Somebody who hates the skin that you're in. Somebody who has said in so many words that white supremacy is king. Somebody who has put babies in cages. Somebody who has taken away everything that has been built by the Obama legacy. It's just crazy to me to see how Black people are really, really supporting him. And he's just so racist to me.
So I'm going to jump in there on that one because that's a good one. When we talk about the support of the president, I think, again, going back to wanting that sexy president, right? We are looking and we vote based off of who's the sexy candidate, which candidate is popping right now, who has more name recognition. When you talk about Black people who like Donald Trump, let's be honest, they like him because of his transparency to say whatever's on his mind. The vast majority of them, we like when people are real. That's part of our culture. We like the realness of something. And so it's really a tough situation when you talk reasons why people support certain candidates, because everybody has their own, whether it is a religious reason and they don't want to vote for the other party based off of certain beliefs and systems. Maybe it's a financial reason or tax bracket reason. And I think for Black people, it really goes down into the mindset of, this is a familiar name that I know. This is what success looked like to me, because let's say it, he did a great job moving the American people, building his name, even though his name was built off of so many different criminal acts, if we can say, or things that were not moral on a moral compass. People are like, that's what success looks like. He has a name on the building. That's what success looks like. So they're more drawn to the Donald Trump success than the Donald Trump, the president.
Well, and let me say this, and Dr. Weaver, you can chime in. When I think about his track record as far as grabbing the pussy, him and Epstein with young girls, what he said, we just recently heard him say about Cohen's daughter. Oh, I like to hit that piece of ass. And the way he disrespects women. We've seen how his wife interacts with him, right? And so for me, I just can't personally, consciously, I can't rock with that. And when I hear people say, well, he's a Christian, he doesn't believe in abortion.
Then tell him not to have one.
That's what I say. And I, you know what, that topic, and it drives me wild. And I said this the other day to somebody. I said, do you know that if people vote based off of that alone, they're just the blind leading the blind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think in so many ways, I'm friends with both Republicans and Democrats.
Absolutely.
So I have some Democratic friends who believe women have the right to choose.
Mm-hmm.
I have Republican friends who you will vote for them because they don't stand for abortion, but behind the doors they took their daughter to get one.
Right.
And I have Democratic brothers and sisters who they believe women have the right to choose, but they would never participate in an abortion. And so we cannot vote based off of the political stance of this party believes this way and this party believes that way, because at the end of the day, behind closed doors, you don't know what that individual person believes. And so we got to really, really, really educate ourselves on the voters. Let's look at some things and hear the stories of people around them. The people around these elected officials are telling us who they are, and we're not listening to them.
Well, when I think about morality, I don't think look at Donald Trump. He's had several wives. He has a lot of children. You know, he's only paid $700 in taxes. So I don't look at him for morality. I often say that God gives us the freedom of choice.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever someone chooses to do with their body, time, or whatever, that's between them and God. So, Dr. Weaver, how do you feel when you hear people say, well, he's done a lot for the Black community?
Well, I want to know what it is. And if he's done so much, how come we're not aware of what he's done? You know, that I'm waiting for somebody to tell me what it is he's done. And, you know, people do a lot of things right before an election. Mm-hmm. They do a lot of things to get reelected. Mm-hmm. And that's how he comes across to me. You know, it's been interesting because I've had an opportunity to work with both administrations. And the difference, it was such a stark contrast between those two administrations. I remember working with the Obama administration, and it was Obama and Biden. And I think I take comfort in Biden because I know he's not perfect. I know about the crime bill. Yeah, you know, but I don't know a white person that's been in power that hasn't done something that's been, you know, a disadvantage to Blacks. You know, you just don't. But it's what do they do to make up for those mistakes? How, you know, because you can say, I'm sorry, you can say I won't do things again, but I want to see actions because I do believe action speaks louder than words. And I just remember, and I'm basing things on my interaction and what we were able to do for Flint, but it was much easier with the previous administration. It's important to have a friend in the White House because people don't realize how that federal government does trickle down to local government. And when you can pick up the phone and call somebody and say, hey, you said you're going to do this. You know, at least you get an answer on the other line. With the Trump administration, I had difficulty because everybody kept quitting.
Well, I just wrote that note down. We've watched his administration. He's changed administration, and I'm going to use one of my mamas and my grandmama saying, like, he changed draws. Like, every day we've seen someone else, whether it was his press conference person, his spokesperson, his attorney, the attorney general. I mean, we saw people come and go so much within this administration. And anytime, and ask yourself, and I thought about this, what do we say about businesses that have turnovers like that?
Right.
Why
you know, there's a problem. I mean, it took 3 different people. By the time we finally got, I mean, it took forever because our point of contact, they kept quitting. They kept quitting. We could never get there. And that was problematic, especially when you're in a crisis and you need something right now, and
well,
you can't
we
even
don't
get
ask
to the people that you need to get to.
We don't.
That was a huge. That was a huge problem.
But we don't ask ourselves, Dr. Weaver, that the question because we say it, we walk into a restaurant or somewhere familiar, right? And you be like, well, why y'all can't keep nobody? What's going on up in here?
What's going on?
What's going on?
What's going on up here? Why you can't keep nobody? And so we've gotten away from that. But I want to talk about real quick Amy Coney Barrett, the nominee to replace Justice Ruth Ginsburg, right? Ginsburg, I'm sorry. Amy Coney Barrett is an American attorney, and just recently she was nominated by the Republican Party and Donald Trump to take Justice Ginsburg's seat, a forever seat in the Supreme Court.
You say a forever seat?
Like
a forever stamp.
A forever, ever seat. Right.
I'm happy you said that forever, because a lot of people don't realize that that Supreme Court seat is a lifetime seat. And again, when we talk about the power of the presidency and who they appoint and who the Senate is supposed to confirm, that Supreme Court seat is so important, because we can turn back the hands of times with that vote. Talked about abortion just a minute ago. We can turn back the hands of time on abortion, same-sex marriage. We can turn back the hands of time on all of those things. Equal access to education. We can turn back the hands of time from the Supreme Court, where the president is only going to be there no matter if it's Biden or if, Lord, we're praying right now that it is not Donald Trump, but if he only gets 4 more years and he's done, but that seat. And when we talk about Amy and just, Lord, let us pray. I'm trying to tell you, because we're talking about
believe. And she has a lot of shit with her.
Her record is wild. It's wild. Her voting record, her appeals record, her record as in terms of the interests of workers, immigrants, and the poor, and what that looks like is not good.
Mm-hmm. And so that's a major concern for me. Where we look at Ginsburg, rest in peace, Justice, we miss you. Where we look at Ginsburg, and her record was phenomenal. And her stance was phenomenal, especially for women's rights. When I look at Amy, we're not going to have too many rights with her.
Listen, they trying to fill that seat quicker than some of us have gotten our colleagues' old positions filled at work, which tells me something's wrong. And so when you talk about her, and again, her rulings and her current role has been horrendous for people. So when we talk women's rights and what that looks like, I don't trust her as far as I can throw her.
I don't trust her either. And he must feel like he is not winning, because why are you trying to rush this? If you were so confident that you were going to be there, you would wait and make that appointment, because you've got 4 more years. But you must be scared. You must be nervous.
Well, he just said last night that if he doesn't win this election, he might have to leave the country.
Well, he might, because
that's fine. Which way is he going, north or south? I just want to know.
Listen, you put that glass down.
I just asked somebody to refill it for me. What are you talking about?
You put that glass down.
I just need to know. I need to know where I'm.
Well, it's crazy, because when we think about the Senate and how they're responding to this nomination, it's so divided, right? You have people saying, how dare you? The ink on her death certificate isn't even dry yet.
Right.
You should wait until after the election. You get what I'm saying? And now you have people like 2 senators, Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, said that the Senate should not vote on Barrett's nomination until after the presidential election. Alphonso, how you feel about that?
I mean, I agree with it because we talk about the hypocrisy of the Republican Party and how they really had that same standard for President Obama during his second term when he was trying to appoint Merrick Garland. And so we really have to look at that. Why wasn't it okay for Obama to do it, but now it's okay for the Trump administration to do it? Why is it that we're trying to hurry up and fill that seat before the election? And so those are some of the things that we need to be asking in the questions, and really just hold the Republican Party to the same standards that they held President Obama to.
They haven't answered that. They have never addressed why they're rushing this, have they?
Nope.
Yeah, that is her mic on?
No,
Or
it
muted?
just said it was muted. I
Oh.
touched it a little bit. My pen flower touched it. She did not answer this, but I think the reason why he's trying to get her in because they asked her a question during the hearings, and the question that came forth was, will you give President Donald Trump not immunity, but pardon? Will you
Right.
pardon him? And she would not answer that question. Because
She didn't
I
answer quite a few
know,
questions.
yeah, she wouldn't answer a few questions. So
Right.
what that told me is, well, I knew this before these hearings. What that tells me is he knows he's going to jail. I'll drink to that.
He better put somebody in place that's going to help him avoid it, huh?
He knows he's going to jail. And so for me, he needs somebody in position. See, one thing about Donald Trump is he's stupid, but he as a businessman, he always tries to stay a step ahead. Like, I don't even like to call him a smart businessman because to me, he's not, right? But he always tries to stay a step ahead. And so, like you said, Dr. Weaver, he always wants to put somebody in position just in case.
Just in case.
It's the art of war for him.
Mm-hmm.
Just in case. You know, and now that everybody is writing books and turning on him, I think once he's up out of the White House, the shit is going to hit the fan.
Mm-hmm.
I think
what song is that Joe? Just in case. I don't want you home tonight. You know.
That's not him.
I think he's gonna be singing I'm locked up. You won't let me out.
That's not in there, Weaver. Oh, I'm so digging this conversation. Well, before we close out, because we done ran over our hour. Okay. We had like an hour, 12 minutes. But this was just a much needed conversation. I opened up the show, and what I wanted to say is, and I'm going to give each of you opportunity to look into your camera and to say what you need to say to compel the community, the African-American community, to get involved. This is not the time to fiddle your fingers. I personally am asking you, and I'm charging you to know before you go. When you go to vote, if you have not done so, understand that there will be other people on your ballot for you locally, your state or your town. We got a couple of things going on in my neck of the woods. You need to know who's on that ballot. You need to know how they vote, how they get down, how they feel about the African American community. So when you go to vote or before you mail in your ballot, you just won't be picking anybody. See, you know, a lot of people do that. They just go down, up. No, I'm asking you, beloved, because it is the bullet or the ballot. If we don't push that vote and rock that ballot, we might as well just put a bullet in our mouths, because everything that we knew is going to be snatched from us. So I'm charging you and I'm asking you, please know before you go. Know about your local candidates. Know what they stand for. Know how they rock out. Know if they're in the community. Know if they just show up around election time. Know their track record. And then I'm asking you to get involved. Get involved into the community. Start showing up at community meetings. Start showing up at your city council meetings. Know the sheriff that you're voting in. Know the judges that you're voting in. Not only show up to the meetings, but join the committees. Become a volunteer. Y'all, we got to change it. And the only way we're going to see change is when we show up. Dr. Weaver?
Shoot, ditto. That's what I need to say. I mean, really, because you hit the nail on the head with that. We need you to vote. You have to vote, because you're not just voting for yourself. You're voting for your mother and your father. You're voting for your sons and your daughters, your aunts and your uncles, your grandparents. If your vote didn't matter, they wouldn't be trying to suppress it. And this is about systemic racism. I tell people all the time that Flint wasn't about water. It wasn't about infrastructure. It was about systemic racism. And they will shoot us. They will put their knees on our neck. They will poison our water. And so we have to be about the business of not letting people make decisions for us and about us. Don't let them take your voice, because your vote is your voice. And I'm asking you, I will beg you to go to vote. Take somebody to vote. We've got to do this. And this is our chance, because this is serious. And you said it. You might as well just what did you say? Put a gun to your head?
Put a bullet in your, put a gun in your mouth.
Whatever you said.
It's the bullet on the ballot.
It's true. And now we have a chance to change the trajectory of where we're going. Yeah. And so let's do that. Let's do it.
Good. Alphonso King.
Ooh, you queens have said it all. Definitely just make sure you have a plan. Whether you're going to vote early, you're going to do absentee voting, you're going to go to the polls and show up at the polls. Have a plan. Again, as Tyra said, know who's on that ballot in your community, research the proposals on your ballot, and then bring a friend. Make sure your friends and family are also voting. Encourage them to vote. We have so many people, sharing with us that our votes don't matter. And so, again, voter discouragement going on. Encourage people to vote, because, again, voting is an act of harm reduction. It's reducing the harm that the office of the presidency and the state leaders and your local municipalities and school board members have in your communities. So get up, get out, and vote.
That's right.
I'm so digging this conversation.
Tyra.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for this conversation. I mean, really, this is so important. So thank you for helping us, get this out. We got to keep talking about this. We got 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, and just to see the conversation on social media and behind the scenes and amongst the family and amongst the friends. And I live in a predominantly Caucasian neighborhood, so every day I'm riding past Make America Great flags and Trump 2020 flags. And so for me, sometimes I get weary and well-doing, because nobody told me that I lived amongst a whole bunch of races. But now that I know how to move accordingly, right? But one of the things that blessed me, and I have to say this, when I first got to office, all you saw was Trump signs everywhere, especially on a road that I ride down often. Now I'm seeing Biden-Harris signs, because Americans can no longer be bamboozled or hoodwinked.
Right.
He has allowed for over 200,000 plus Americans to die on his watch. That's more people who die than what our soldiers do in war. You get what I'm saying? He has denounced COVID-19 as a hoax, while you and I have lost loved ones. He is having the good life while we're trying to figure out how to maneuver around our monthly bills, because a lot of our jobs have either shut down, laid off, So for me, I just want the American people, especially the African American community, to be okay. We deserve to be okay too.
Right.
We deserve to have the best education. We deserve to have good jobs. We deserve to have good health care. It saddens my heart to know that so many brothers and sisters have transitioned because of the nonchalant attitude towards them due to COVID. Oh, your symptoms aren't that serious. Oh, go home. We have lost so many queens and kings to COVID-19 because of the color of their skin.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a problem for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole problem for me. So I just wanted to host the conversation before the election so that people would know. And I wanted to bring the contract with Black America to the table, along with the Biden-Harris contract to the table, so we could discuss it. So Dr. Weaver, it's truly been an honor. Let the people know where they can follow you at and tell them about Black Money Matters. When to tune in.
On Black Money Matters, you know, we pop up anytime, but we're usually, we'll do it behind the scenes in a minute, but Tuesdays at 3, we are normally on. You can catch us on Black Money Matters. We're on Instagram, Black Money Matters Inc., and on YouTube. And I just need to say, Alphonso, I have enjoyed having a conversation with you. I mean, he's not that far from me. So we'll have to get together.
My birthplace, Port Huron, Michigan. I think she was stuck.
Did I lose you guys?
No, we're good. What were you saying? You got stuck a little bit. She's stuck. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh. You there, Weaver?
I didn't hear anything you said.
I was just saying my birthplace, Port Huron, Michigan. So he's not that far from you. And we're going to have to shoot up there after you all's weather break to probably go eat some food on the water.
Absolutely. Thank you, ladies, so much for having me a part of this conversation. I've enjoyed it the entire time. So again, thank you so much. I wouldn't spend my Sunday evening any other way. This was great.
Alphonso, thank you, King. It's not easy having a conversation with 3 strong and vocal Black women.
You ladies made it
joining the conversation. We absolutely adore you. Let people know where to follow you at.
You can follow me on Instagram at Alphonso D. Amos, Twitter, Alphonso D. Amos, or Facebook. Definitely follow me there as well.
Guys, thank you so much for joining this conversation. Dr. Weaver, thank you.
Thank you
for being my guest co-host. Dr. Pugh had to leave because she's at a wedding. Thank you, Dr. Pugh, for joining the conversation. And King Amos, Alphonso Amos, I love you. Thank you for joining the conversation. Queens and Kings out there, make sure you know before you go. Thank you for joining the Queen's Wind Down on tonight. Be sure to connect with us on all social media and understand if you're dealing with it, we're talking about it. I absolutely enjoyed this conversation tonight. Thank you, Dr. Weaver. Thank you, Alphonso.
Thank you.
And have a good night, everybody. Hey.
Me and the girls just went down, and that's why we're missing each other's ground. We flying down, me and my girl flying down, and that's why we're missing each other's ground. We flying down, me and the girls just went down, and that's why we're missing each other's ground.